That's Emma.
And this is Karl. And
this is Rittal unBoxed.
So Karl, another day, another episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
Who have we got on the show this week?
Well, we've got another guest. We've got Yannick, who's our vertical market manager for Rail and Telecoms. And yeah, we're going to talk about everything trains and everything mobile phones.
Excellent. That sounds like a good conversation to have.
Well, let's find out. So Yannick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So obviously we're here to talk. We want to learn more about you. So I guess first off, as we always do with a guest, bit of a background really. What was your pre-Rittal life and leading up to working here?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the old university days when I was a politics student, and a bit of language is thrown in there as well, a bit of Spanish, because I'm rebelling against my French side of the family and said I'm doing something different. But so yeah, I did the university thing, politics, and hey, lo and behold, I ended up in a career that involves a lot of talking.
Yeah, well, that helps.
So yeah, I did the politics thing and ended up after that working for engineering companies. Two customers of Rittal actually, and working on a lot of control systems based work, a lot of big engineering type projects in all industries, all sorts of industries. Yeah. Heavily on the nuclear side, a little bit on the defence side, and oil and gas as well, but predominantly, effectively all industries. And yeah, eventually I ended up by consequence at Rittal.
Yeah. So did you rub shoulders with Rittal at your previous companies then?
I knew of Rittal because those companies used a lot of Rittal, and it was really just a really fortunate coincidence that they all came up at the right time, as much as anything. So yeah, always great to work for a manufacturer, so that's something I was looking for.
So when you started at Rittal, originally you were working more of in an area sales manager role, and then you transitioned to a vertical market role for the rail and the telco sector. When you made that transition from area sales manager to the rail sector, I mean, what appealed to you about that role or the actual sector itself? Because I mean, rails, it's one of them industries where you have to live and breathe it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
What appealed to you about that role, really?
So I guess with the area role, it's very, as you know, it's very broad. You're in every industry, all sorts of customers, all over the place, all the time. It's really nice to work in, the railway sector, one specific sector where you can really get good at understanding one thing and becoming as good as you can be in that sector. So that was one certainly big area of appeal, is just to really focus down and develop something that was also relatively underdeveloped within the business. So there's a nice opportunity there to go after something where there was a lot of new opportunity for us. On the flip side to that, a lot of what we do, most people don't get to see. And it's nice for once when people, what do you do? What do you do? What are you involved with? You can physically point to something in a public space and say, I was involved with that. Whereas, if you do work, as in factories or oil rigs, which we don't even really get to go to, or power stations or whatever it may be, unless someone works in that space, they're not going to ever really get to see what you do. So
absolutely,
as much as anything, it's really nice just to be able to point at something and say, yeah, that's something I was involved with.
I suppose being in a vertical market role as well, like you've just said, it's you can see progress, because like I say, you're focusing on a small area as a territory manager or an area sales manager. It's very sporadic as well, whereas you can actually see gains that you make in that sector, in terms of how successful you're becoming, in terms of not just the volume of product that you're selling, but, people getting to know you in that market as well a little bit.
Yeah, and you learn the parlance and the wording and the inside sort of inside terminology and things, which, like I say, comes only with time and building those relationships, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I think there's one thing really that people aren't aware of, that actually as a business we've been involved in the rail sector for quite some time. I don't think we've got a lot of gains, a lot of traction to make in the rail industry. We've been involved in it for quite some time, but not long enough yet to a certain extent. There's lots of approvals to process through. Red tape. And I think the thing is as well, it's having somebody with that knowledge how to navigate all that. And obviously that's where you've come in. Because I said for me, the rail industry, you've got to live and breathe it or you haven't. And if you live and breathe it, that's when you understand, you pick up the jargon. Like I said, and you've done fantastic in that, in terms of navigating through all these gates, these gates that we've had to get through as a business to say, right, we have a solution, you know, and we know what we're talking about as well. And I think that's been possibly in the past where we haven't been able to do that because we haven't had anybody dedicated to the rail sector like Yannick's been. But now, because he has been sort of living and breathing in that area, you understand now what these processes are and how to move forward, you know, with this project or that product or whatever. But it must be really difficult trying to keep on top of all that. It is
a challenge. And as I say, if you go back to the area sales manager role, with all these hats that you have, it's very difficult to become we all try our best, of course we do, to become knowledgeable in it as much as we can. But the bonus of being this full-time focus is we can learn a lot more about one particular industry and get much, much better at it. So yes, the approvals are a challenge. It is something that we're continually working on. And yes, there is a bit of red tape. I think that's no secret within the railway industry that you have to go through. It's obviously there for good reason. It's a very, very safety-conscious industry. We're transporting millions of passengers a year on very high-speed pieces of transport, the trains, and obviously that includes things like metros and undergrounds and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of safety at stake, and it's just understanding and navigating through those. Yes, they are onerous processes. So, I mean, the good news is we're making developments on that front. We have certainly some approved product, and we are working away at getting a few more products approved as well for the industry. And really the goal is, in the ongoing conversations, with what we supply the industry, quite often, i.e. the outdoor housings, the enclosures for telecoms, communication systems, signalling systems, that kind of thing, quite often a lot of these solutions are made to order, they're fabricated, whatever it might be, and so they are made specifically for an application, but as time moves on, you might need to change it. It's just not quite fit for purpose when new technology goes in. We all know technology now is increasing at a much more rapid rate. So what we're looking to do is offer the market a platform which is modular for that future-proof adaptability, but also, as much as anything, it is as much as off the shelf as possible. And that's a big key thing, because it makes life so much easier for the industry, just to be able to take something that's available, not wait weeks and weeks or months and months for delivery, and just get it in situ. Because not only is it safety critical, this operation never stops. You know, the trains pretty much never stop running. So, and nor can we afford for them to stop running. You've seen with all the weather disruption, the chaos it causes when they do stop running. So it's important having that uptime.
It's very much in the public eye, isn't it? So it's one of those things that the public have a big opinion on. Because like you say, our other products go in places people don't see, whereas we all use the rail, some of us day-to-day sort of thing for commuting and whatnot. So, I mean, how... Obviously, you can look at the press and it's very fear-mongering and very negative and things, but from your side of it and working with these guys who are developing rail, how do you feel the rail sector is at the moment? Where is it going? You know, what developments are being made?
Yeah, so I think the rail sector is going through a period at the moment. It's a little bit of a transition. Ultimately, it runs these control periods. We are transitioning from one control period into another these last 5 years.
Right.
And what we're seeing now is there's a lot of legacy assets on the rail network within the UK, particularly if you look at the signalling network, which is aging, shall we say. And there's a big push right now for digitalisation and using more intelligent assets, more digital assets that work faster, more reliably, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But of course, that brings in itself its own challenges, because being able to deploy that kind of technology requires suitable infrastructure. So infrastructure that will support equipment, which is often sensitive, runs hotter, requires more power, all these kind of things. So it's very much a transition that the network is going through at the moment, and we're seeing that happening a lot at the moment, and it's going to be a big focus moving into the next control period. And even if you look at things like HS2, which... obviously, there's a lot in the news about that at the moment, but a big conversation point at the minute around HS2 is a lot of the systems that are being put in place now, because a lot of the infrastructure has been designed, it's in the process of being constructed. That will obviously continue. But the next step is, okay, what systems are we putting in place? Because there's a lot to consider.
Absolutely.
You know, you've got communication systems, access systems, customer systems, or customer information systems, station systems. There's a lot in the background that allows the railway to run that people just often would never think to appreciate or know that's there, you know?
No,
if you're standing on a platform and you see all that information, when's your next train arriving, what time is it, are there any delays? All the announcements. There's a lot of infrastructure which goes behind it. That's one small example. There's a lot of infrastructure which goes behind that.
So we're hearing the news about HS2 a lot, obviously. It's all over the media, and we know that a part of that is no longer going ahead, which all seems a little bit doom and gloom if you listen to the news to a certain extent. But is there other investments going off? Is there other good stuff going off in the rail industry other than HS2 that we just don't hear about?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone knows HS2 because of the size of the project, but at the end of the day, it's that small leg between London and Birmingham. There is much more to the UK, and one big example would be the Transpennine route upgrades. Huge infrastructure as part of what's known as the Northern Powerhouse, which is all around about improving a lot of transport links all around the north of England.
Yeah.
Equally, it's happening right now in the eastern region and predominantly, and that is digitalisation of signalling. We're seeing a lot of investment on that side of things, well-known projects. And again, if you look to Scotland, there's always a lot of infrastructure upgrades, particularly around connectivity. Access for all systems is a big rollout to improve just general access, security, safety in stations. Track upgrades. There is a lot going on, and that's just outside of that region. Even if you look to London, for instance, there's a huge amount always going on in London as well to ensure that environment is always up to scratch, just because the sheer number of people that use the transport network is incredible.
Absolutely, the amount of people it must shift in a year. It's taking a lot of toll and must wear down at a more rapid rate, I would have thought.
I think it's amazing how the different service that you get in different areas. I know that obviously for us, Karl and I obviously living locally to here, when we need to travel down to the Canary Wharf office, we literally jump on the train in Doncaster. We sit on the Eastern Railway. We can be down in the office in less than 2 hours. So it's about an hour and 35 minutes.
Something like that,
An hour and 35, 40 minutes.
No problem.
And then straight at the tube and into the other office. So for us, we always actually experience a really good service. It's on the odd occasion trains get cancelled, and there's certain things that's outside of the network's control. That's always going to happen. But it's really funny how we experience such a good service because of where we are. But then in other areas of the country, I know it's massively lacking. It's, like I say, it'd be nice to get that consistency throughout, obviously, as a nationwide service.
Yeah, of course.
When we look to other countries as well, I recently was in Switzerland last year, and the rail service there is like nothing I've ever experienced. If it says it's going to be there at 9:29, it's there at 9:29. It leaves exactly on time. They've got the infrastructure right there. So other countries are doing it really, really well. It'd just be nice to see some of that come to the UK, really.
And that's it. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to investment. It's not cheap.
No.
If you want to expand networks, put in new tracks, it is not cheap. So I think when the government assesses these things, and this is my opinion, but my guess is it's a case of how much is this going to cost, and are we going to get a true bang for buck doing this? And the government does invest in areas where they will not see return to allow that connectivity. We've seen that a lot in Scotland, for example, where there are a lot of remote areas. But it's a big investment, it's a big cost. So it's just about, I think, making sure people are doing that as efficiently as possible. And the folk in the industry, they work hard. A lot of folk I know, they were working on Christmas Day, which a lot of people wouldn't necessarily entertain.
They have to work on popular hours because, like you say, otherwise it's going to disrupt people's ability to get to work and things. So then they have to work when there's nobody around and things, and you don't really think about that.
You think, the trains have to run during the day. We can't really bring them down unless we absolutely have to. So when work needs done, guess what? People are working night shifts, they're working overnight, and it's not just in the summer, it's in the winter as well, when the conditions are harsh. So
graft.
It is big graft, and there's a lot of thousands of people across the UK doing a lot of good work to try and maintain our networks.
I mean, it needs to get better. I mean, if you look how busy the roads are now, from the roles I've done in the past 10 years, travelling a lot, obviously, to different customers, the roads have just got busier, and that's not going to change. Where there's going to be more cars on the road, we're a population now that ages quite well. The population is increasing. The number of cars on the roads are going to increase. We need other ways of being able to get up down the country. Whether that be unfortunately buses have to go on the same routes as cars do. So the other option then is, like I say, is the rail industry. But that really does need to come to the up to speed, because pardon the pun. But it does. When it works, it's a fantastic service.
It's just
that consistency of working well. But it's nice to be. I feel quite proud that we're part of that at times in terms of what we offer as a business. You know, it's nice to be involved in them projects as well. From a personal perspective, how have you found working within that sector?
Yeah, it's as we alluded to earlier, it has its challenges in terms of the approvals and pushing through new solutions or innovations, that kind of thing. But when you do it, there is a level of pride. As I say, you can physically see what you've worked on, what you've developed with the other players in the industry, and what that looks like, and ultimately what it gives the public in terms of whether that is better security or better customer information, accessibility, that kind of thing. So there's an element of pride when you see these projects come to fruition, but yes, it's not without its challenges either.
I suppose some of it's a bit of an education process, really, because the rail industry, you imagine, you know, whoever the contractor or the controller may be, they're so busy looking at the rail infrastructure as a whole, they're potentially unaware of what other products, services, technology there is out there, because it's so difficult for them to keep on top on. So, you know, a major part of your role is that education process for these people and saying, did you know there's actually a better way of doing this?
Yeah. It's not only that as well. I think it's often, you know, we look at what we do in world leaders in enclosures, and so that's what we supply ultimately to Network Rail predominantly, are housings and enclosures for their systems. When you look at the grand scale of railway, and when you're doing these new capital projects and the size and scale of them, what we're providing, for being honest, is quite small in both value and scale, but very critical. Because if it goes wrong, systems stop working. And if the systems stop working, in many instances, the railway might not be able to run. You know, if you look at communication systems, which their trains are reliant on as part of a safety feature or anything like that, if the housing fails, and therefore the active equipment inside fails, it's game over until that gets fixed. So although small, very, very critical if overlooked and mistakes are made.
I think that happens in a lot of industries, really, when it comes to housings, enclosures. People overlook it as it's not an important part, but in actual fact, that housing is protecting critical infrastructure. And like I say, if that fails, that infrastructure fails.
Absolutely.
So it is it's taken for granted to a certain extent, you know, in terms of what we offer as opposed to a certain, you know, in some respects. But
and what we've got to remember is obviously a lot of what we do that sits in factory floors. Not everything is a clean environment. Not everything's an easy environment outside the railway, what we deal with, but a lot of it also is. The railway in particular is not an easy environment. No, we're outside, we're by the track side, we're in publicly accessible areas. You've got snow, wind, rain, everything. These cabinets have to be able to withstand quite a lot of abuse to be able to work. So as I say, small part, but critical part.
On a similar vein then, something that's in the public eye and we talk a lot about, going on to maybe the telecoms arm of your role, which is obviously still very, you know, that's how you're watching this now. You know, the telecoms role and things like that. So I mean, how are you seeing telecoms? Obviously, I guess the HS2 of telecoms is the 5G rollout and increasing that in the UK. So I mean, how are you seeing that side of the business?
So it's been going on for a relatively short period of time. Telecoms expansion, yes, 5G is the big well-known one. That's still ongoing with 5G rollout. If you look at players like BT and EE, they are pretty much, I think, at the forefront from what I've seen of that, although there are other players. It is a market that is on a rapid growth trajectory. And it will continue to be on a rapid growth trajectory for probably some time because, as you pointed out, pretty much everything we do in our day-to-day lives requires that connectivity, and that connectivity does not happen without the telecoms infrastructure behind it.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of projects, particularly now, if you look, where a lot of the big cities have had a lot of infrastructure. One big example being City Fibre that we were heavily involved with. If you look, that's very much in the public eye. A lot of major cities, roads have been ripped up to lay fibre in, all that kind of stuff. That's all around giving people the accessibility to connectivity. Because I think the way it's going, it's being looked at, it's almost becoming an essential part of life. It's being treated as such.
I was going to say that it has been sort of considered now that everybody needs it as an essential part of life. And it's funny how sort of, even in my lifetime, it went from sort of something you tied up the phone line when you were doing dial-up, and now we're doing super high-speed internet, even in, like, you know, villages like where I live, they're rolling out high-speed internet, and I've got that in my house now. It's just so effective how they're rolling it out. It's an expectation, absolutely.
I think you look at your mobile phone, literally everything's on your mobile phone. Your banking, your shopping, the way you connect with everybody
your
else.
Doorbell.
Don't want to, your doorbell, your deliveries, which I contribute to a massive part of that. But yeah, everything's done on your mobile phone, and we have this expectation now. The slightest bit of lag, and it's
absolutely.
You don't like it in any shape or form. You look at 5G. 5G predominantly now, a lot of that is streaming. Yeah. People don't watch everything online. My kids drive me insane, absolutely drive me insane with whether it be YouTube, TikTok, you name it. Yeah. But ultimately, we look at then, 6G is already in the works. Mm-hmm. They're already discussing it. What is 6G going to be? Is it AI? And that's it. All that processing power is needed. We've got that in data centers, but then we've got, the 5G mass at the moment. Then we're all at 6G. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what that's going to bring. What is that going to look like in terms of infrastructure? What is that going to bring with it? Yeah. Because I think that will be potentially another huge step change.
And it's a big and valid point in the infrastructure side, because again, you people talk about the cloud as if it's some mystical thing up in the sky. Yeah. What people don't necessarily appreciate, actually, what these are data centers filled with equipment. Yeah. Thousands and thousands of racks worth of equipment all around the world supporting all that infrastructure, all the processing required to allow those transmissions. Yeah. And then that gets put out locally, and then that gets dispersed via things like 5G masts or fiber under the ground or whatever it might be. And it's not just a public problem either. It's very much a business and industry problem, because as the world gets more connected, so must industry to keep up. A lot of industries are having, again, in the same way the railway is, having to digitize their assets, having to put a lot more local things in with a lot heavier IT and compute requirement. And guess what? You need the infrastructure to support it. And especially now with manufacturing, for instance, if you're running a lot of robotics, a lot of artificial intelligence, etc., it's not just now a question of, okay, there's a data center there, we need to maybe buy some space. Yeah. You hear a lot of talk about things like latency, and all that is time for effectively data to travel, if you want to dumb it down. But the further you are away from a data center, the greater that latency is. And if you need to run something live, even like, the concept of streaming, but imagine that for an operation, a manufacturing process, you can't always afford that latency. No. And so you need things locally on site. And there's a lot of infrastructure required for that. And it's a big area which we've been involved with as a business. Yep. Helping companies output those assets locally on site to allow them to manage that kind of process.
I think we chatted about this actually in another episode, but we talk about what's next, AI potentially, in terms of 6G. But then you talk about the cloud, which means it's, you need more data center space. But with that data center space, you then need to power that data center space. Yep. How do we power that data center as well? Because we know that there's certain parts of the country where there's no longer the availability on the grid. Central London, for instance, I know that they struggle because the power isn't there to have any more data centers, which is why we're seeing in more remote areas. But again, that then comes down to an infrastructure. Then it comes down to, in terms of, are we going to be using nuclear? Are we going to be using renewable power? It's
as a large,
everything's so intermingled.
It's all intermingled, absolutely,
But then from a business perspective, we're heavily involved in all them sectors, which is great from our point of view. But it's also, I think, from a personal perspective, it's quite scary as well in terms of we're actually only a small island. We need more and more space. We need more and more electricity. We need more and more, data centers, we're trying to get the railways. There's a lot going off.
There is.
But like
a lot of moving parts, and I think when you look at it like that, you understand how complicated these things are and how interconnected they are, and how we actually do a really good job at getting these things sorted when you think about it. All these different bodies and etc. trying to work together to, provide, like you say, instantaneous service on your phone, in your home, wherever you are. It's amazing that it works so well.
Well, because I'm tinkering at the moment, because I wanted to get a better appreciation of, what our customers, what do they deal with? Let's try something basic at home. So I'm actually tinkering and putting my own movie collection on my own hardware, and effectively running my own streaming service, but at home. And it gives you a real appreciation, as you're saying, about actually how difficult is this and how good a job do people do. If you look at Netflix and Amazon Prime and all these big tech companies, 4K's, you're watching films and you have 4K this, Ultra HD that, and it comes through and it just works. As long as you've got the hardware, it just works. Trying to get that to work at home, my God.
Yeah.
It is difficult. I've tried it. You're plugging it in, it's all connected. You're thinking, right, play, buffer. But that wheel of death.
You want to try doing that when you've got 3 kids at home. One's on YouTube, and one's on their Xbox, and somebody else is watching whatever. Yeah.
And this is the thing, because I was thinking about this, because I've no doubt in the future I'll have this issue as well with the kids thing, and the more connected devices, and all of a sudden your Wi-Fi is getting loaded, you can't get anything on. I thought, well, we're starting this now. Hopefully we get to that point. But it makes you think, the amount, even just in my house, the amount of infrastructure I actually need to put in to support this, it's not straightforward.
There's some really good points that you made there. Thank you for discussing them. Really interesting. About you, in terms of Rittal, you've been here now for what, 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
Okay. We've talked about the fact you've done area sales roles before, you're doing the rail role, how's it been for you in terms of the last 5 years, in terms of how you've grown as a person and how you've seen changes in the business, have you enjoyed it,
Absolutely. Rittal's a great place to work. And I'm not just saying that because we're here, it's...
You are. No, joking.
No, it is. It's, first of all, a family-run company this size is incredible. I always think back to that and I think, this is mental when you think about it.
When you tell people,
Rittal, globally, you think, fair play, to Free Download for setting this up and the way it is. But to have an industry, which to a point actually is quite niche as well, it's... There are a lot of industries out there, and we work across pretty much all of them, but there are only so many companies in the world that at scale do what we do.
Yeah.
So to be involved with that is exciting, and just as much as anything, the exposure and the stuff you get. I've seen all sorts of incredible places through this job. I'm sure we all have. From I've seen hydro stations built into mountains. I've seen all sorts of data centers and edge type facilities. You've seen food manufacturing, drinks manufacturing.
I think that's the thing, you forget that because of the industry that we're in, wherever there is any type of electrical connection, you have to have an enclosure. There's got Rittals there, so you forget that it's actually in every industry there is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's fascinating, and you really do learn a hell of a lot in the 5 years that I've been here. But we're also, as innovators, as leaders within the industry, there's the amount of innovation. It's great to be able to take that to a customer base, which generally appreciates it. It actually adds a lot of value to their operation, and it's a hell of a lot of gratification in providing that sort of thing. So, it's been a great 5 years. Obviously, had a nice bit of progression within the business as well, which has been brilliant. The people here, all very welcoming. We're all just people.
I think that's the thing. That's the culture that we have. Yeah. You find that there's a lot of people been here a long time. There's a reason for that because of the culture that we have. Like I say, in terms of, the progression through the business, like I said, the job itself in terms of it's interesting, it's great to go to all these different places, see all these different applications. But I think as well, our customer base is a massive thing for me. We have really good customers. And I think that helps massively, in terms of it's a relationship. It's not just a transactional thing. We find that with all our customers, it's actually really good relationships that we have with them.
Yeah.
So I think that really does help. And so, it makes it a great place to work and a great role to have when you've got them relationships with customers, not just your colleagues as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of stuff going on. One of the big things as well is shouting about what you're doing. Yeah. So you've got an event coming up, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because we're pushing rail quite heavily and getting our involvement, and part of that is meeting people, rubbing shoulders, things like that. So we've got the Trans-City Rail Midlands event coming up.
Correct. Yeah.
29th of February.
Yeah.
So you've been to those. You went to those last year as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
You say they're a really good set of shows across the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Trans-City Rail is an event that it's capped, it's limited, it's paid for, and as a result, it tends to attract a lot of people that really want to be there. We've all been to events where you can get a lot of footfall. Certainly the big, well-known national events, you get a lot of footfall. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't always necessarily mean everything is relevant, or it could just be people walking around, a general interest, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
These events are focused, they've got specific agendas, brilliant conference and series of speakers that always go. Always a lot of key players within the industries as well, on both sides of the fence, whether you're the actual end user, the network rails, or the LNERs, or whoever they might be, all the way through the supply chain. So we exhibit, we show off a bit of what we can do, we have those conversations, both at our table and obviously in the conferences themselves. It's just a generally very well run event. So last year it went very well, we all very much enjoyed it, and we'll be moving that forward this year as well.
Nice.
I think, like I said, with the Transit to Rail events, one thing I found, obviously, when I've been at them with you, was as a business, you're investing money into these events. You wanting to showcase your solutions. But you don't want to showcase them to, like I said, the people. It's neither not the right audience. Whereas at the Transit to Rail ones, it very much is. Like I said, because it's more focused. But we've really gained a lot from these events, haven't we, with Transit to Rail?
Absolutely.
So it'd be good to. And we're exhibiting at all three this year. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the one in February is the Midlands one.
The Midlands one, then we'll be doing, I believe it's London in the summer, and then North Manchester. November, I think it is.
Right, okay.
I think we're also sponsoring the North one in Manchester.
Nice. Well, we'll, as the year goes on, we'll mention those again and pop them up on the show so everybody knows when they're on and they can come down. And hopefully, if take some video and things, on the next episode, we can do a bit of a recap of how you got on.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, Yannick, pick a question, a mystery question.
Okay, let's have a look. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
What about a personal perspective?
A personal perspective. In 5 years, let me think.
Because you're already married.
I'm already married.
Lovely wife, so that's sorted.
May well be kids at some point, I'm sure, in the next 5 years.
Still living where you are? Any plans to travel or move? Or?
Wouldn't like to move. I live in Edinburgh. It's a great city, so very much like where we stay, and everybody knows the hassle of moving. I'd rather go through that again in a hurry.
Like travel?
Travelling, yeah.
Anywhere you'd like to go in the next 5 years in particular?
I would really like, truthfully, to visit somewhere either in Africa or Far East Asia, simply because those are two parts of the world I've never been to. I've done South America, I've done North America, I've done a lot of Europe. I've done Middle East, I've never done Far East Asia or Africa. So that's on the cards. That's definitely on the cards.
Nice. Sounds
like
good.
a good aspiration.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show. Really good to chat.
Yeah, really interesting. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah.
Keep you busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we shall speak to you again in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on.
So thanks to Yannick for coming on this episode. It was a really interesting interview and hopefully you found it interesting as well. If anybody has any questions or comments or even suggestions, send us an email at unboxed@rittal.co.uk and keep your eyes peeled on socials, like and subscribe so that you're up to date for when the next episode airs. Thanks for watching.